back to English Classes Online. My name is Benjamin. Today's video is on stative verbs in English. What are stative verbs and how can we use them correctly in English speech and writing? If you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Click on the bell icon as well so that whenever a new video is uploaded on the channel, you will be notified instantly. Let's dive into the lesson right away. First, we look at the agenda for today's episode. Number 1, what is a stative verb? 2, how do stative verbs differ from other verbs? 3, what are the uses of stative verbs? And 4, how do we use stative verbs correctly? We are going to look at this one by one. Number 1, what is a stative verb? Stative verbs are verbs that express a state or condition. For example, the words believe, love, like, know, understand, have, hate, prefer, and so on and so forth. You will notice that stative verbs express a state or a condition, and as you can see, the stative verbs also express feelings, express emotions. We shall be looking at various uses of stative verbs, and we can see that stative verbs do not express physical action as dynamic verbs do. In other words, there are various classifications of verbs, and one of the ways of classifying verbs is to classify verbs as dynamic or stative, and we shall be looking at that classification. Dynamic verbs are verbs that express action like play, jump, sing, run, dance, and so on and so forth. Number 2, how do stative verbs differ from other verbs? Now, let's take a look at how verbs are classified generally. Then we will specifically look at the major difference between dynamic and stative verbs. First, let's look at verb classification in general. There are various types of verbs, and verbs refer to those words that we use to talk about action or states of any noun or subject. Verbs will either report the action of the subject or their state of being. All right. So here we look at action verbs. We look at action verbs here, and action verbs can be classified or subclassified into transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. All right, transitive and intransitive. Now, transitive verbs have a definite object, on which or for which the action is being performed. For example, Rose is painting the kitchen. The kitchen is here the object. And if I may have to give you an insight into this, sentence analysis, well, I think this is a verb phrase, so let's get the classification right. Now, Rose is the subject, all right? We denote that with S. Is planning is the verb, is a verb phrase that represents the verbal components, yeah? So we denote that with V. And then the kitchen is the object. So here whenever you find action verbs, you discover that the action verb here is painting. All right, Rose is painting the kitchen. All right, so if you whenever you use paint, then somebody will ask you. If you say Rose is painting and you end it, somebody has to ask you, is painting what? Because it has to take an object. All right, it requires an object to complete its meaning. That's what action verbs do. But here we can also use the same verb as intransitive. In other words, we may use it without an object. Rose is painting right now. All right, so in this case, we are removing the object and we are replacing it with an adjunct. All right, an adjunct is something that gives us additional meaning to the verb. It's an adverbial. So Rose is painting right now. Rose is the subject, is painting is the verb, and right now is an adjunct of time. So we denote that with a. All right, that is an adjunct. All right, so please, I want you to just look at that. Okay, Anna gave him a big hug. And then that gave is an action verb. Sneezed is an intransitive verb. You know, both are action verbs, but one is transitive. Gave is transitive. Sneezed is intransitive. Hannah sneezed repeatedly. So where you have an intransitive verb, then the sentence will likely be will likely have the SVA structure, subject verb adjunct, and that is the same thing here. Anna is the subject, sneezed is the verb, and repeatedly is the adjunct. It's an adverb here, it's an adverb of manner, you know. Then dynamic and stative verb. That's another classification of verbs, and that is what we have. Will have our attention in today's video because we are going to look specifically at stative verbs. But let's look at how the classification is made. We are looking at stative verbs vis-a-vis other verbs that are different from stative verbs. So let's have this, fundamental understanding of verbs. So verbs can be classified as dynamic and stative. Don't forget we have described action verbs as transitive and intransitive. And by the way, we have described verbs as action verbs. All right, and action verbs can be either dynamic or stative. All right, and we are going to look at all these. Then we look at linking verbs, which are verbs of being. All right, okay, so dynamic verbs refer to verbs that express actual action or actions that are progressive, that we can look at the process. They denote an actual action or expression or process done by the subjects. Stative verbs, on the other hand, tell us about the state of mind of the verb, of the subject, or the relation between the subject and the object. So it tells us the status, the condition, or sometimes the expression of feeling, the expression of emotion, expression of thoughts, or if you like, the mental state. All right. Now let's look at dynamic verbs. She buys new clothes every week. The word buys expresses action. It's an action. And if you look at dynamic verbs, you can see that dynamic verbs are responsive to changes in you know, the tenses are complete. You can talk in terms of, you know, it can be used in all the tenses, including the continuous tense. You can say someone is buying something in the market right now. All right, so that is a dynamic verb. You can talk about the simple tense, you can talk of the continuous tense, you can talk of the perfect tense, but the stative verbs do not use the continuous tense. We are going to look at that, and we are going to look at exceptions. You know that in every linguistic rule, in most linguistic rules, you find exceptions, just as rules behave generally. All right. Then the second example of dynamic verbs is the verb swim. He is swimming at the beach, so it can be used in a progressive or continuous sense. Swimming is an ongoing process, but you can't use the progressive sense or the tense instead with stative verbs. Now, the first example of stative verbs here is prefer. She prefers strawberry. It would be wrong to say she is preferring. No, you don't. Prefer doesn't have a progressive. It can be used in a progressive or continuous sense. All right, it's something that expresses a mental state. Now, the cupboard requires a new coat of paint. Requires. All right. So then we look at the last classification in this particular instance, linking verbs. There are, of course, other classifications of verbs. That's the lecture for another day. Now, linking verbs are verbs that couple the subject with the objects. I mean, with the complement, of course, if you like. So, linking verbs connect the subject to a noun or adjective that helps in describing or providing additional information about the subject. And when you have a noun or an adjective that gives additional information or describes the subject, then that noun or adjective is known as the complement. Now let's look at this. Lisa is fuzzy about food. Let's analyze this. All right, let's do a sentence analysis. Lisa is the subject here. Okay, then we break this. Is the verb here. Then fuzzy about food is a different component entirely, and that is the complement. So we see that this sentence has the SVC structure. Wherever you have a linking verb, what follows the linking verb is likely to be a complement. All right, whether it is a noun phrase, or an adjective or an adjective phrase. All right. The second example, they are stubborn children. Again, they is the subject, are is the verb, stubborn children, the complement. The students felt relieved. All right. The students subject felt, verb, relieved, complement. All right. Every student felt the relief. All right. Every student felt the relief. Okay, so now these are the classifications of verbs in broad terms. So let's take a look at the classification of verbs in terms of the dynamic and the stative, and then let's specifically look at the differences. All right, Dynamic verbs versus static verbs, stative verbs. Dynamic verbs, sometimes referred to as action verbs, usually describe actions we can take or things that happen. All right, things that happen. Okay, so that's talking about dynamic verbs. And examples of dynamic verbs: become, drink, eat, go, grow, learn, lead, run, sleep, talk, type, walk, watch, work. These are dynamic verbs. They describe action. All right. Then stative verbs usually refer to a state or condition which is not changing or likely to change. That's why it's called stative. The word stative is derived from the word state. A state is a condition, all right? A condition. The stative verbs cannot normally be used in the continuous forms, that is ing form, all right? Examples of stative verbs are hate, like, love, prefer, doubt, seem, know, own, recognize, understand, think, meaning to have an opinion, mind, have, meaning to own. Of course, when you can use have in a different with a different meaning, but when it means to own or to possess something, it is used in as a stative verb. So we have that can be dynamic, and we have that is essentially stative. So we are going to look at this in greater detail. All right. Now, what are the uses? What are the uses of stative verbs? Now we are going to zero in on stative verbs, and we want to look at the uses of stative verbs, how stative verbs are used. All right, so that's exactly what we are going to look at right now. What are the uses of stative verbs? Now, stative verbs are used as follows. Number one, to describe a status or a state. Already we have seen that when you describe a state, you are referring to a mental condition, something like hate or like. All right, you like something, you prefer something, is talking about the state of the mind. All right, then you can express feelings or emotions, all right, such as love, the feeling of love, the feeling of hate, all right. So that is, when you express emotions or feelings, then you can use stative verb to express thoughts and opinions, to indicate ownership. We talked about have, own, all right, possess. Now, number 5, to refer to senses, such as the sense of hearing. You talk of hear, see, feel, taste, touch. All right. Then number 6, to express measurement, cost, appearance, etc. So we shall be looking at these examples. We shall be looking at these uses when we examine the various examples. Now, let's look at the uses of stative verbs with examples. And take note that stative verbs are not used in continuous tenses. Let's deal with the stative verbs that express feelings. Feelings of like, dislike, love, I like rice, or Mary likes tea. Junior dislikes coffee. Okun loves his wife. Love. I hate lying. They prefer taking a loan to buying on credit, buying goods on credit. Want, I want this, you want this, he wants that. Needs, I need this, he needs that. Mind, care, all these express feelings. Then you can use stative verbs to express thoughts or opinions like know, I know something, all right? Think, understand, believe, guess, mean, suppose, doubt, realize, remember, forget, agree. All these are mental. There are instances when, we are expressing our mental state, all right? Our mental state. So generally, you discover that stative verbs are used to express state, but it can be a state of feeling, a state of thought, sensual states, state of ownership, state of measurement, and so on. All right. So then, when we express the senses, then we talk of feel, hear, see, smell, sound, taste, touch, look. So in this case, you are uh, using stative verbs to talk about the senses. All right. Then to indicate possession, you have words like belong, own, have. All right. Then measurement, cost, and others. You talk of cost, that something costs like this. Measure, weigh, owe, seem, be, appear, consist. So you can use stative verbs to talk about appearance. All right? Okay, so now we have to understand that some of these can sometimes be both dynamic and stative as well. All right, we are going to look at various instances. Now, we come to our item number 4 on our agenda, and that is specifically how do we use stative verbs correctly? How can we use stative verbs correctly, and how are we not supposed? We shall be looking at all these, because when people commit various grammatical errors, we will look at errors that are associated with the wrong use of stative verbs. All right. Now, number 1, you need to know that stative verbs are not used in continuous or progressive tenses. For example, you can say, I know him, but it's wrong to say, I am knowing him. All right? So that's one thing you need to know about how we can use stative verbs correctly. Number 2, stative verbs are usually used in present tenses. Of course, when you say, I know him, this is used in the simple present form, I know him, all right? But you cannot use it in the present continuous, past continuous, or future continuous, all right? It's not used in a progressive sense, all right? So with this in mind, let's move on to really look at these specific examples of how we can use or not use stative verbs. All right, we are going to look at how we can use stative verbs correctly and how we can misuse them, thereby committing grammatical blunders. We are going to look at all these. All right, so we have to look at stative verbs not being used in continuous tenses. And we also ought to understand that stative verbs are related to feeling. They are used in expressing feelings. So as we already saw, a class of these verbs used in expressing feelings. We do not use them in progressive tense or continuous tenses. When we use stative verbs to express feelings. We do not use them in continuous tenses. Well, we shall look at this from different angles. Now, the first we are looking at is the word like. All right. I like your new haircut. I like your new haircut. It is wrong to say I am liking his new haircut. It is wrong to use it in this way. Then the second one is dislike. She dislikes him so much. She dislikes him so much. It is wrong to say she is disliking him. All right? Then the next one is love. I love you. I love you. That is correct. But it is wrong to say I am loving you. No, I am loving you. All right? Then hate. I hate Monday mornings. That is correct. But wrong to say I am hating Monday mornings. No. Now prefer. We have talked about love. We have talked about hate. Now we come to prefer. We prefer red wine. And we cannot say we are preferring red wine. All right? Then the next is want. He wants a new car. Certainly not. He is wanting a new car. No, you can use, when you use wanting in this way, someone is found wanting, it takes a different meaning. All right, but that time it ceases to be a stative verb. All right. Now, need. I need your help, but certainly not I am needing your help. Mind. I don't mind, but you cannot say I am not minding. You can say, would you mind if? You cannot say, would you be minding if? No, of course, you can see that these verbs cannot be used in continuous tenses. That's one particular thing we have discovered about them. And so when you use these stative verbs that are related to expressing feelings, when you use them in continuous tenses, you commit grammatical errors. Then another one is care. She cares for her baby. She is caring. All right? Of course, you often hear the word she is caring, but then caring is used as an adjective in that particular, it's used as a complement, which is an adjective. She is caring. So if we use caring as an adjective, then it can be used in this ing form, but certainly not when you are using it as a stative verb. All right. So we have been able to look at specific examples of how we can use stative verbs correctly, and we have also looked at the wrong use of stative verbs that has to be avoided in order to avoid committing grammatical blunders. All right. Now, there are exceptional cases of stative verbs that can be used as both stative and dynamic. That means they can be used in continuous tenses. We can use them as stative verbs. We can also use them as dynamic verbs. And that's exactly what we are going to look at. Now, verbs, can be both stative and dynamic. Some verbs can function as both stative verbs and dynamic verbs. Let's look at them. One of them is look. When we use look as a stative verb, then of course we can use it in this way. It looks cold outside. Looks cold outside. Then we can also use it as dynamic. He is looking out the window. He is looking out the window. So the verb look can be both stative and dynamic. The next one is appear. Jack appears to be tired today. Appears to be tired today. In this case, the verb appears is used as a stative verb. Now, we can use it as a dynamic verb when we talk about appearing on a television show. She is appearing on a television show today. Appearing. The next one is the word think. I think that Mr. Peter is a good teacher. I think. The verb think can be used in its stative form here as a stative verb. But we can also use it as dynamic. I am thinking about the problem right now. Thinking, thinking. I am thinking about the problem right now. It can be used in this dynamic form as a dynamic verb when we use it in this way. The next is feel. I feel that Mr. Peter is a good teacher. We are using it in stative form. Then I am feeling a little tired today, feeling a little dizzy, feeling a little weak. Now, when you use it in this way, you can use it as a dynamic verb. The next is have. I have a car when the meaning of have is ownership or having a possession. I have a car when the meaning is I own a car. Of course, it is used as a stative verb. But when you say I am having a good time, I am having a good time. We had a good time. All right? We had a wonderful seminar. You know, when you are using it in this way, you are using it as a dynamic verb. The next is see. Do you see those birds? In this stative form, it will be wrong to say, are you seeing those verbs? You know, are you seeing what is written on the bird? Of course, you can't use it in that progressive form. When you use it as a stative verb, it cannot be used as a continuous tense, in a continuous tense. But when you use it as a dynamic verb, you can use it in a progressive sense. For example, the doctor is seeing a patient now. Now, in this case, it is no longer describing a state, it is now describing an action. You know, seeing here means, you know, being consulted or meeting someone or discussing with someone or treating someone. The doctor is seeing a patient right now or attending to a patient right now. All right, so the meaning changes. It's no longer describing a state, but a process or an action in progress. All right, so the next one is taste. The pepper tastes hot when it is used as a stative verb to express one of the senses, the sense of taste here. It is not used in all right, in a progressive sense. But when we say the chef is tasting the soup, we are using it as a dynamic verb. The next is smell, to indicate the sense of smell. Something smells bad. What is this? Now, this is a stative verb. Smell is used as a stative verb here. But when we say Anne is smelling the perfume to see if she wants to buy it, smelling the perfume, that is in terms of testing it out, then of course the meaning is now dynamic rather than stative. Then another one is the verb be. He is immature. So this is a verb of being, is a state that is describing a state. He is immature refers to the state of immaturity. But then when we say he is being immature. Being immature. The word be here is being immature. Means he's acting, he's acting it, he's behaving it. All right. So in that sense, we are using it as a dynamic verb. Now the next is weigh. The suitcase weighs 20 pounds. When it is about the weight or the measurement, then of course it is a stative verb, weighs. But it is dynamic when we say the butcher is weighing the meat on the scale. This refers to an action, an action that is being taken rather than a state, all right? Okay. All right, so measure. The surfboard measures 2 meters by 55 centimeters. Measurement. This is used as measures, is used as a stative verb, but it is dynamic here when we say the architects were measuring the distance between the pillars. Here we are using measure as an action. We are measuring the distance, all right? They were taking the measurement. Then the next one is mind. I don't mind if we watch a movie tonight. Of course, mind here is used as a stative verb. But when we say, I am not being nosy, I am minding my own business. So it is used as a dynamic verb here. So that is exactly, we can look at these specific examples of stative verbs that can also be used as dynamic verbs. But we note that not all stative verbs can be used as dynamic verbs. We already looked at examples like love. I love this. You cannot say I love you, but not I am loving you. I like tea, but not I am liking tea. So you need to understand when a stative verb is actually strictly to be used as a stative verb, but cannot be used as a dynamic verb. And we should also take note of the fact that when we use a stative verb, a word that is a stative verb as a dynamic verb, we have to ensure that that verb is being used appropriately to express an action. All right. It is only when we are using it to express an action in an appropriate manner that we can say that it is now being used as a dynamic verb rather than as a stative verb. All right. So now let's look at common verbs with both non-progressive and progressive meanings. It's just similar to what we have already seen, but just a quick rundown of these various examples. Non-progressive means we can use it in the ing form, and then progressive means we can use it in the progressive form. It's similar to what we have seen, verbs being used as both stative and dynamic. Now we have already seen the verb look, and then it looks cold outside. Take note of how we can appropriately use it as a stative verb. It looks cold outside is stative. She is looking out the window is dynamic. Appear. Jack appears to be tired today. Stative. She is appearing on a television show today. Dynamic. Think. I think that Mr. Peter is a good teacher. I think. All right. This is stative. Then, I am thinking about my family right now. This is dynamic. Thinking. I am thinking about my family. Then, feel is stative when we say, I feel that Mr. Peter is a good teacher. I feel that. All right. But then, dynamic, I am feeling a little tired today. I am feeling cold, right? In that way, you are using it as a dynamic verb. Then have, when you use it to indicate ownership, I have a car. It is stative. But when you use it to refer to an action, I am having a good time. In this case, you are using it to refer to a particular experience. You are enjoying something, so to say. All right? I am enjoying a good time. I am having a good time. Then see is used as stative. Do you see that bird? When it is expressing the sense of seeing, then of course it is stative. But when it refers to action such as attending to a patient, for example, the doctor is seeing a patient now, that is dynamic. Then taste, the soup tastes salty, refers to the sense of taste, that is stative. The chef is tasting the soup, the action of testing it out to confirm that the soup is quite good. All right, then the sense of smell, if the sense of smell is highlighted by our use of smell, then it is stative. Something smells bad. Something smells bad. That is stative. But if we are expressing an action, such as Anne is smelling the perfume to see if she wants to buy it. You pick a bottle of perfume and you bring it closer to your nose. You are smelling the perfume. It's an action that is taken to actually verify whether the perfume is the type you want to buy. All right, that actually is an action. So we have looked at these appropriate ways of using the stative verbs as stative verbs, and we have looked at exceptional cases when we can use stative verbs as dynamic also. Then this is where we shall draw the curtain in today's video. We have been looking at stative verbs in English. What are stative verbs and how can we use them correctly? I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, like the video and share the video with your friends and relations. Make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Activate the notification system by clicking also on the notification bell so that whenever a new video is uploaded on the channel, you'll be notified instantly. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you have any comments, if you have anything that you want to talk about, commendations, please do leave them in the comments below. I want you to know that your comments are highly valued, and whenever you make suggestions, we actually look at it and we take prompt action. I want to thank you for being part of today's episode, and I want to thank all of you out there for giving massive support to this channel. It is with your support that we have actually crossed the 1,000 subscribers mark. I really want to say a big thank you to all of you, and I want to say that I love you and you are the reason why I do what I do here, and I will continue to ensure that I give value to all of you out there. Once again, I want to thank you. I appreciate your support. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye bye.